Thank you for joining us today for our next series that we're speaking about. I guess the next episode in our series that we're talking about regarding drivers and hiring and managing people. And this will be, I believe, our third in our series. And we're excited to get going on this one because this is kind of a passionate topic about hiring and what's happening in the process when you're bringing on drivers, and for Scott and I anyway, because this is kind of like our wheelhouse big time, to talk about what is working and what isn't working when you're bringing in drivers. And it's how do we manage the process of hiring drivers? And Scott had brought this topic up to me. I thought it was genius. So let me just quickly give you a little background on myself and Master Staff, and then I'll toss it over to Scott for him to do the same, and then we can jump right into our topic. So my name is Jennifer Sheets. I'm the CEO of Master Staff. I started Master Staff 23 years ago, and in that amount of time, we have placed over 35,000 people in various positions all over the US and Canada. And we are a WBE certified corporation, which means that we meet all supplier diversity requirements. And we have staffed in the fields of logistics and industrial, corporate, IT, you name it. I find it hard pressed to find things that we haven't probably touched in at some point or other. Scott is head of all of my national accounts as far as even hiring and logistics. He handles the Master Staff Logistics division of the corporation, and just amazing, connected human being, to say the least. So Scott, I would love for you to tell a little bit more about your background and your expertise you're bringing to the table today for our discussion.
Hello, Glenn. Hello again, friends, if I can speak today. Welcome back to the webinar. We're happy to bring these to you. This one has a special place in my heart today because it's process-based. As we all know, and Jennifer knows, I am very process-based. So this one kind of digs in where the previous is maybe dug in a little on your emotions. This is going to dig in on what you have to do as a contractor to secure talent. Okay, so we're gonna really dig in deep today. But you've heard my background before, a lot of FedEx background, a lot of recruiting management. I've just got a lot of knowledge I'd love to share, and can't wait to get it going. Let's get it going, Jen. What do you say?
That sounds perfect. Well, Scott, this is the challenge, right? This is the challenge everybody has. Let's move our little picture over here. Let's see, it's hiring the best and keeping them, right? So we want you to see how we feel that the way should be paved, because this has been a complete 180 as the way companies look at this process. And we've realized that many of them look at it so analytically that it's not the right way to look at it, in a sense of they think they're out thinking what the process is as opposed to following a process. So that's kind of where Scott was saying I'm excited to kind of get into what this really is. So our agenda, this is our takeaways for today. We want to go over drivers having choices, how you stand out in a sea of employers, capitalizing on candidates and what that word actually means, a swift hiring process. I love that you put that word in, Scott, swift, because that says it all, doesn't it? And strong, it does. And then a strong candidate interaction goes with that. And then at the very end, we want to talk about being irresistible and what that actually means, and when it comes to bringing on board, candidates. And remembering one big, huge thing, and that companies get what they give. And that's kind of the theme of what we're going to be talking about today, is the extras that you put in is what's going to set you apart from everybody else. So as we hop into the first section of this topic of drivers have choices, and Scott firsthand can tell you right now that when it comes to drivers having choices, that this is where the companies think that they know how to get those people to come to their organization and work for them, and they're very off on that. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background. I'm going to have Scott kind of color that up and tell you what he sees and experiences out there. So there are 570,179 trucking companies in the United States. Okay, so that's a lot, right?
A lot of competition.
Yeah, a lot of competition. So standing out, right? So the three main questions you have to kind of gut check and ask yourself are: one, how are you standing out? And we get that you have everybody has a different type of company, and you're limited in the things that you can do and provide sometimes based on the discipline that you're in and the industries that you serve. But we'll go in a little more in depth on how that affects you. Do you know what your competitors are offering drivers? Like what do they say? You can't you can't compete unless you know what your competition's doing. Even if you can't do what they're doing, sometimes looking at what's being done can help you come up with new ideas. And then respect and react accordingly to the fact that, drivers have choices of where they work and want to work, and if they want to even start their own venture, and knowing that that is a possibility out there, you have to stand out. So Scott, I'll kind of give it to you a little bit, share a little bit of what you see going on as far as the competitiveness of companies, or lack thereof, of them trying to get drivers to come and work with them.
Well, as you can see, it's a very competitive market, almost 600,000 independent, small, large trucking companies out there hiring a pool of drivers. Granted, it's a huge pool of drivers, but it's a very competitive market. So used to, companies had the upper hand. I mean, a company could put an ad out and have 30 candidates within the first hour, and they had their pick of the litter, and the candidates
True.
really wanted to go to work. The candidates really were eager to get started. It's different these days. The candidates don't care. The candidates know that when they come out of school, trucking school, and they have a little experience, they can almost work wherever they want to in the Class A market. So they can they hear and they see that they can almost demand what they want to be paid and what benefits they want. So it's a lot different than some of the older days. Now it's what I call a driver's market. The driver controls the market now. They control the hiring market. So now the businesses have to cater to them. That's what the business owner is having a tough time doing these days. I'm finding. I'm a recruiter by skill trade. I can flip and flop however, okay? I can meet the driver's needs. I can meet the company's needs. Whatever you need me to meet, that's the goal I'll meet. So I have zero problem catering to drivers, catering to their time. But the hardest part for me is convincing these company owners and the hiring agents inside the company owners to conform as well. You have to be willing to change in this market. If you're not going to succeed. That's the number one thing I want everybody to get out of this webinar today. The old ways of hiring are gone. You no longer do you have all the control, and you have your pick of the litter of drivers, and you can pay them what you want and treat them how you want. Those days are gone, Jen. They are absolutely gone.
They are gone. And talking about how to stand out, it kind of lends itself into us jumping into the next part of the topic, because if anybody's thinking, well, what are those things I should be doing? As we take you through our process today, it's going to start asking you a series of questions to it, then where I think there's some really great ideas, and you're going to start to answer those questions for yourself, actually, even kind of going through this with Scott and I, and standing out in a sea of employers. When Scott kind of come up with this part of the topic, we're talking about standing out and how do you differentiate yourself. Okay, that first set of questions you have to ask is, what do I know about this? And recognizing and understanding how many people are out there as far as competition goes. Now we're talking about how you're going to actually stand out in that sea, right? So here I want to expand a little bit. We'll stay on the slide for just a minute, because you have to inventory your usual ways of doing things and add 3 new. Okay, and I love these pictures that we've chosen, because, for example, you'll see one where it says, yes, we're hiring, but you can't get paid in burgers, and then we talk about people engaging in specialty groups and asking for referrals, which, you can have people in your office that don't have time to go to the Rotary Club or think traditional ways. Oh, it costs to join this or that, and that's not really how we find our people. And then you have the whole idea of, should we have a strategy for this? Is the strategy is, where are you posting and who is calling you, and did you put something up on Facebook? I mean, these are the usual things, Scott. You can say this. We see this all the time. This is what happens constantly. It's just, they think they're doing all of the normal things. But when you think you're doing all the normal things, that's what everybody else is doing, right?
Right.
So you have to be posting your position and engaging in specialty groups and asking for referrals in a different way. I want to give you an example personally of something that we've done, and I'm going to have Scott give you an example, and then we can jump into the next section. But when you look at what your industry is in, so let's say, I love using cold storage as an example, because it's an easy one to kind of, everybody understands, right? So if I am serving, let's say Nestle, like I house all the Nestle ice cream in my facility, and I have drivers that are going back and forth, with the freezer trucks and refrigerated trucks and whatnot. I think it would be in my best interest to find organizations that support those groups that are in the cold storage business that may have connections to drivers. And I think the disconnect is we look like, okay, well, drivers don't maybe go to those meetings, they're on the road. Exactly. But everybody knows somebody else. And that is where we have to think bigger. We have to think more referral based. We have to think more like-minded, birds of a feather flock together. And that's where you start to build a strategy, and you've got to put pen to paper to that with those 3 new ideas. Of if I sit there and I say, okay, if I'm going to sit for a meeting and I say, hey, I'm looking for this. Do you know anybody? Can you point me in the direction of somebody else that knows somebody? And then you have to follow up and follow through with those. It's going to be a niche group that nobody else has. It's not an algorithm on Indeed. It's not an algorithm somewhere else that just picks people up, that just post a resume. Now you're going to find people that maybe aren't happy in the job that they have, and you can pluck amazing employees to bring to your team. Scott, I know that you have some experiences as well that I would love for you to share what you've seen with that.
Well, contractors know that these truck drivers talk. I mean, they gossip and gossip when they're out at, doing their thing, and they're out at the fuel station and the rest areas. They talk. So the easiest way to get the best drivers are referrals. Honestly, if you have a great driver on your staff who's just your top guy, they run so hard for you, I would be asking him once a week, hey, do you have any friends that you've met on the road that might be looking for a gig that you want to bring aboard? Do you have anybody that you might want to team with? Did you meet anybody? Do you have any friends that's got a new CDL that might want to drive? Those are the guys I would be asking for the referrals, because referrals are so easy. The referrer has already sold the company. They've sold
Right.
the business. They've done your job for them, for you. So all you have to do is step in, hire the person, and then you've got another great employee working for you. It doesn't work out all the time, but a lot of times it does. I would say it's got a 90% success rate of bringing in referrals like that. So that's the number one thing. And plus, it saves you money. You don't have to advertise that position. You bring a driver in on your own, and you pay a little referral fee to your current driver, and that's it. So that's the best one I've got, Jen. For
And
kind of
it's good because you're sharing like a little insight on that. And then I think that companies that are really used to staffing or their own trucking companies and then are struggling for drivers, probably their first initial reaction to you and I is like, well, that's obvious. We ask for referrals all the time, or we've joined these organizations and we don't see a change in this. What we're saying is it's not one of those things, it's all of those things and then some. It's putting a strategy together. That's why I said pen to paper. And one of the things that Scott and I do, aside with our company, is we offer those services as part of our company to actually make it so that it's specialized to your industry and what you're actually looking for. And once we do that, we can delve down into deeper and we can build that strategy with you. But we're trying to get you to think right now that it's not just joining a group and it's not just referrals, it's both times another 5 or 6 things.
Yeah.
And sometimes you think, well, it's the same thing I'm doing referrals. Well, how are you doing the referrals? How are you getting it out there? Where are you doing that from? What are you offering for that? Is it where someone's well? Who follows up with that? Who follows through with that? It is not just saying that, because I can understand before we jump in this next part of our discussion, where you might say, well, we're doing those things. But you have to be really honest with yourself when you're running a business and you identify an issue and a challenge that you have to overcome is, am I really doing everything that I need to do? And I need to gut check that. And then I need to react and make changes based on that. Go ahead, Scott. Yes.
I got a quick follow up to your
Sure.
point. Saying you're doing those things and actually doing them are two different things.
Absolutely.
Okay. I hear a lot of contractors say, Scott, I've tried that. Well, if you try it for a week and you move on because you don't get any results after a week, that's not really doing it. Okay. It's something you have to commit to and stick to for a long term. So many small business owners, they try all the things that we're implying here, but then they don't see the results after 2 weeks and they move on. And then you tell me, Scott, I've already tried that. No, you haven't. You didn't.
Right.
You didn't put the effort in. The effort has to be there consistently. Same with us. Marketing, you have to market. And eventually you're going to get a cult following and then you're off and running. Same thing with this. You have to continually do it. It's not a one-time deal. Jennifer, you're absolutely correct on that. Sorry to interrupt you, but
I'm glad you did.
I had to make that point.
The truth. Well,
saying it is not doing it.
Exactly. And Scott, one of the things we always say is, what if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So
Right.
like you brought up an excellent point saying, well, just doing it for a week. And someone might say, well, I don't have the staff or the time to keep doing it for a week. Because in your mind, you're looking at it so huge. For an entire week, I have to sit there 8 hours a day and do this. And that's not how that works. It's a consistency sometimes in a very small piece of effort, or and sometimes using technology to help do that, that you can set up for success ahead of time to where you're barely touching it, but it's doing the job for you and the work for you. And again, that comes back to things that Scott and I do in our business that are customized for our companies when we help build out strategies. But we want you to take away today things that you can have talking points with your team to start making changes that will help you improve the amount of qualified candidates you have that you can bring into your organization. So this is a really good segue into the capitalization of candidates, right? So what does that really, really, truly mean? This is an excellent article. I encourage anybody to click on it. It's here for you for reference. And it's talking about, I need human in-person connection to look people in the eye, to shake hands and give and receive friendly embraces. This probably goes against everything that someone in logistics and trucking wants to do, right, Scott? I mean, really, people don't want to have those conversations. There's a reason why people that drive trucks enjoy what they do. They many times, not that they don't want to ever see anybody, but they like the solitude, they like those kinds of things. So how does this affect everything? Well, there's stages of that. And everybody wants to feel wanted, and everyone wants to know that they belong. If you're going to entrust your family's economic future in a company that you're partnering, that you're spending the majority of your life doing, you don't want them just barely talking to you at the get-go. You're going to go find the company that gives you the warm fuzzies, right, Scott? So like engaging with the candidates and connections. So I'm going to talk about a few of these things right here. And I know that Scott has an example of this as well, but people don't realize that 70%, 75%, and actually, I think this number is low. I think it's more than that, but 75% of all candidates are disengaged in the interviewing, hiring, onboarding process within the first few days when communication is chased. And what's that mean is like, if I go to Scott and I give him my resume and we have an interaction where he says to me, well, what times are you available to interview? And then I tell him, and then I have to 3 or 4 days later, I don't hear anything. That's an issue. Like, I think they don't really want me, or they're not that serious in hiring.
Yep.
The other thing is, and we're going to delve into that a little bit more deeper, but just kind of covering what we're talking about here. Empathy and communication tools are an absolute must in order to increase the amount of talented candidates you have to choose from when you're hiring a driver or anything actually. And empathy just means that you feel like you truly understand where someone's coming from. If you know the concerns of what drivers have out there, those should be the things you lead with, of what you do differently than everybody else, or just as good as everybody else, that allows them to feel like they want to come to work every day, right? And sadly, many people in the hiring, and this is especially I find in the logistics side of this portion of logistics, they don't want to speak often to candidates. They just want to go through the motions. I got to hurry up. I got to get someone hired. Point, click, let someone else do it. And then I'll see you when you hit the road, right? And it's costly. Okay. It's very costly because they feel that. And if you start really actually genuinely connecting, just even in those few touches, even if it's not with you specifically, but maybe it's one of your team members, you will start to realize that your reputation is going to be, like Scott mentioned, at the fuel pump, talking to somebody and say, hey, this company's really great. From the very beginning, they really acted like they wanted me there. Your reputation will begin to drive those referrals. Scott, like you've seen that with a few different people talking about how they felt when they've tried to talk to a company and what's happened with them.
All right, Jennifer, let me take a deep breath. I'm going to be long-winded on this subject because I see it so much, and I'm going to make some contractors mad, but don't take it as I'm trying to upset you. Take it as an education. You have to engage with the potential candidates. You cannot do the same old thing. You cannot just shoot out an email and leave one voicemail and think that's going to do it. If a candidate expresses interest in your company and sends in an application, you need to chase them, number one, with all 3 forms of communication up front: text, call, email. That's number one. You have to continue to follow up, okay? If more often than not, the candidate wants to talk to you, but they feel like that if they don't hear from you within, I would say, the first couple hours of supplying their resume, that you're not interested and they're going to continue moving. I am successful because of this. If you look on a Minddeed account, it says that this employer answers 90% of the time within the first 2 hours, okay, of
I
receiving
love
an application. You
that.
know why? You know why? Because as soon as one comes in, I don't care if it's Thanksgiving morning, okay, if it comes in on my phone, I'm answering them with a text at least of text, okay, and letting them know that I received your information. I'm going to be reviewing it. And you have to keep constant contact in there. You can't take 2 days after that first text and review it. They're already gone. That candidate has flown. They have gone to the next company.
You're speaking the truth, Scott. You're speaking the truth.
Yes, you might as well forget about that candidate and scratch them off.
Yep.
They're already gone. Okay. You have to reach out to them and let them know that you're going to be right back with them. Okay. And then you have to follow up on that with a text or a call. Okay. I don't care if it's holidays. I don't care what it is. Weekends, you have to do it. Otherwise, you're going to lose that candidate. I've seen it so many times where a weekend, you would think if an app comes in on Friday, oh, they know I've got the weekend off. I'll get with them on Monday morning. Guess what? I've contacted so many Monday morning. Oh no, Scott, they hired me. Somebody else hired me on Saturday afternoon. There, with the amount of companies that we saw just a few minutes ago on the previous slide, that there are 10 other companies in that first hour reaching out to that candidate. If they are interested in your position, you have to jump on them immediately, and you have to stay on them. Now, this will be a future slide, and I'll go long-winded on that slide as well. But the follow-up through the entire process has to be there, on point. You cannot let up, not for 1 second. All right, I'm done with that slide.
No, I'm glad, because you know what? It's funny, when we were putting this content together, I realized how much some of these slides, and as we present to you, we want things to be organized to follow a pattern, so you can kind of see how you can take these items and check them off and apply them. But really what we just talked about and what we're going to talk about it falls right in together. So it's kind of like, I know exactly what you mean by that. So the swift hiring process, including strong interaction, it's going to follow up exactly what Scott and I are saying. And he will be able to expand upon more, just as I can, when it comes to this. And so I thought this was really funny, this little Batman thing, because make the customer the hero of your story. Well, what we mean, I like to think, is that make the potential candidates the hero of your story right from the very beginning. So it's critical that during and after the interview process that you make decisions quickly. Scott's talking about that right there. He's saying, look, if I wait too long, they're going to be gone. I follow up, and I give you so much, so many kudos, and I'm just so thankful for you, Scott, because you instill and do what I have set as a vision of this company, and that is to be able to talk to people and have them respond and know that you are responsive, and you're fantastic at it. And it's critical that during and after this interview process that you make these decisions quickly. Now, as we keep going, you don't want to confuse this the same as candidate connectivity when vetting candidates. So this is why these slides kind of seem similar, but they're a little bit different. When Scott and I were talking previously about candidate connectivity, it's a little bit different of how you start that engagement process versus now we're going to get to the point of we're going to maybe interview you, and maybe there might be a potential to hire and all that kind of thing. So it's similar, but a little bit different. So what we're going to jump into on this part of it is not about the initial touch and go like Scott was talking about, but it works hand in hand with this. So limit the amount of times a person has to interview for the role. Scott, gosh, this is so maddening for you and I, right? I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I have watched major corporations that we have been hired by to place people lose phenomenal candidates because they can't get out of their own way. I mean, really is what it boils down to. Either they're not really truly ready to hire, or the people that they have in the hiring positions are busy, which is fine because they are busy. But you can't say to somebody, it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks to get them in, or 4 or 5 interviews, or I interview and then I don't hear anything back. I mean, I feel like my examples all run together because it's true. One of my biggest pet peeves is you put somebody in a position to where you jump them in real quick so they can interview somebody and they have to travel, right? But that is the person that's making the hiring decision, and they can't do that. And it's up to no fault of their own. They can't do that till they're done handling something that's going on critical, that they're actually bigger responsibility, let's say, in their organization. And if they're in that hiring change, so like I call it hiring by committee, right? So instead of, if Scott hires me, maybe Scott he makes a decision, but he's got to run it by 5 other people, and then they all collectively have to come together, and that just wastes time. If you need to be ready and be ready to pull the trigger, for lack of a better term, and as to when you want to bring somebody on board. So traveling and having that happen, either have it before or after. Wait to do the interviewing process and start all that after someone comes back, and don't wait too long. And then use the 3 principles of communication daily to ensure, where the candidates are in their search. And when I get done telling this, Scott's I know have a lot to say about this, and he touched on it previously, and that's the talk, type, and text. It's the 3 T's. You want to talk to people, like maybe one day you're talking to them and leaving them a voicemail, they can actually hear you. The second day, maybe you're emailing, so that's typing. It's an old-fashioned word, but it's really what we do. And then maybe the next day you're texting them, and then maybe you give it a rest, and then you go to texting again, and then maybe you go backwards to the talk, and then you maybe go back to the email. But as long as you're constantly having that communication during the process, it makes a person feel wanted and like you're really interested in them, and you keep them engaged in what you're doing. So Scott, I'm going to let you run with this here, because you and I are very passionate about this subject of where employers go wrong in this process and what they can be doing to improve their candidates being actually hired and actually turning a candidate into a great hire.
Jennifer, what kind of world are we today? We're an instant gratification world, right? We want instant, when we do something, we want instant gratification for it. Well, the drivers and the applicants are the same way. So tidbit here for all you viewers, you contractors, if you interview somebody, let's say you interview them over the phone or in person as well, okay? That candidate wants to know immediately how they did in that interview, okay? They want to know because they're unsure. Let's just be honest here. When you interview, it's a bone rattling process. Okay.
Right.
So when you're driving home, you're like, God, did I do good? Did I screw it up? How would this feel if the contractor or the hiring manager sent a quick text 15 minutes after that interview and said, Scott, you did great in that interview. Loved you. Let me do some paperwork stuff and we'll get right back with you. Now, that's not saying we're going to hire that person. That's just giving them the confidence that they did great in the interview. And guess what you just did? You kept that candidate at least a day, maybe 2 days,
Right.
from going and looking for another job. Because if they're wondering if they did a good job, they may go home and say, I screwed that one up. Let me go apply to 5 more places. But if you leave that instant text that you did great in that interview, and that's what I try to do on all mine. As soon as I have turned them over to the contractor and the contractor's completed the interview, and the contractor calls or emails me and said, Scott, I just interviewed John. John's a great candidate. I instantly turn around and text John and say, hey, man, heard the conversation went great. Give us a little bit of time to work the kinks out and we'll be right back with you. It doesn't commit you to yes or no hiring the candidate. What it does is it puts them on the fishing line and holds them for another probably day or two from going and looking somewhere else because they think, oh, I did great in that interview. I nailed that job. I'm getting that job. That's exactly what they're thinking. Oh, that's a great little tidbit for you contractors to take home with you today. You have come to me and you have said, Scott, we want to be able to do this ourselves. So take that tidbit and run with it because that's a really good one. Okay. Follow up on that interview. As soon as you get done interviewing them, send them a text and let them know they did great and you enjoyed talking with them. If you don't do that, they're going to go home questioning whether they did well. Okay. Looking at the 3 principles, obviously I told you about it. You have to talk, you have to email, you have to text. Texting is a great way to reach people up front. Okay. I talked to a contractor just the other day who said, Scott, I asked him, I said, have you reached out to the candidates that I've been bringing to you? Well, I've called and left a bunch of voicemails. I said, what? Have you texted them? No, I'm not a big texter. Well, you got to become a big texter because that's the only way you're going to reach these people the first time out. I'd say 95% of people, I mean, I'm not an expert here, but 95% of people do not answer their phone if they don't know who it is. Okay?
That is
They're not going to
100%
answer.
true.
They're not going to answer. And if you leave a voicemail, they're going to delete the voicemail. They're probably not even going to listen to it or they're going to let it sit in their inbox. Okay. You have to text them first and you have to say, this is so-and-so, the contractor. I know you're dealing with Scott Stewart. He passed your number along to me. When's a great time for us to interview? That is a great introductory text that lets the candidate know who you are, number one, and that Scott has followed through on his process, number two, and that gives them a way to say, okay, I'm not available now, I'm at work, but I can get you back at 3 p.m. How about we talk then? Then you can call, then you call, and then they'll answer, and then you have your conversation. And then from then on, you can text, email, call, whatever you want to do, because you've both you're now friendly with each other. Okay, that's how it works. You have to become a texter these days. I know you don't want to, but you have to. Okay,
It's a great point, Scott. Right. Well, and like you were talking about how you email and call too. I mean, that's why I said talk, type, and text. You have to shake them up. And what Scott's referring to is in the world of drivers, this is how they're responding, and he sees it every day. So he's saying, you reach out via the text first, but you have to call, you have to email, you have to use different forms of communication because
Yep.
it makes them engaged with you. And something that you brought up made me think about, Scott, when you're talking about people going home after they maybe had an interview and it wasn't great, thinking that maybe I would entertain another one, but getting some good feedback. And like he said, that doesn't commit you, but getting some really positive feedback makes them think. If, John Doe Company calls them up at night and says, hey, we're really interested in you right now. If they feel that good part and they love what you're saying, they're gonna question. Yeah. And they might put off even interviewing or not even entertain at all until they hear from you. And
Great
that's
point.
what you want. Exactly what you want.
Great point. Great point. You hit it right on the head. That is the goal, is to keep, because we know that First Advantage for FedEx contractors takes a while. We know that.
Oh,
The vetting
yes.
process is going to take a while. Anything you can do to keep the candidate on hold, you have to do. So awesome point, Jen. That's exactly what it does, is it makes that candidate go home and think they're already hired. They think they're already hired. So if DHL calls them that night and says, hey, we want to interview you for this job, he's going to say, well, I've kind of already accepted somewhere else. I'll call you in a couple days. That's genius.
Absolutely.
Good
And
point.
before we jump into our last part of the topic, just to expand on that a little bit more, if your company's sitting back going, I don't want to give people false hope, that's going to create a bunch of issues down the road, thinking that, well, I thought you were going to hire me and I didn't take another job opportunity, or I could have interviewed somewhere else. It's what you say, it's how you say it, and it's the follow up and follow through. I think we've gotten to the point now in our work world that we're so afraid of what people will do, and we're like making decisions for them before anything even happens. So in our brains, we're thinking, okay, this is what could possibly happen, so I'm going to take a back footing here. I think, like, even if you're just saying, hey, I talked to the person that you interview with and they thought it went fantastic, but we don't know where everything is in the process, and I'm not sure all the other candidates we have, but right now I'm feeling pretty good about it. And at the very least, if something happens and you don't get this role, we're going to have some takeaways and some feedback, and we can look at some other opportunities. But right now I'm feeling really good about what's happening, and you should too. Remember, if someone is perfect at interviewing, there's probably a problem, because it's the same as resume writing. Scott and I both feel that way. If you're excellent writing resumes, you probably wrote too many, which is not a good thing, right? So these are things you should not be really good at, and you should be a little more uncomfortable with as far as the person going into it. And so just keep that in mind as an employer and everything. It's not what you say, it's how you say, it's the way you communicate with people, the way you follow up and follow through. Make them feel human. I mean, that's what it is. Make them feel human. Absolutely. And that you actually care, that even if you don't want that candidate, they stopped their day, took the time to sit and learn about your company to see if that's a good fit. Respect that. That's first and foremost. The last thing we want to talk about is being irresistible.
Can I add one quick point?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So I have a lot of candidates, and I'll make this quick. I have a lot of candidates a lot of times ask, where do I come in? They'll ask me that when I say it's time for an interview. They'll say, where do I go? Why do they say that? Because they think it's going to be in person, and they actually want it to be in person, because let's be honest, people interview better in person. They interview better in person when there's a physical, hey, how are you? Shake hands, touch arm. It just, the interview, the interaction goes a lot better. It is not bad. It is not a bad idea for you contractors. These people are going to be in your area. For you to take a day, take my list of 15 candidates that I've brought to you, and schedule all 15 for physical interview, and just take one day out of your week and go through physical interviews. Invite them in, handshake them, look them in the eye. That way you can get a good gut feeling of what you may have, and they can get a good gut feeling of what they would be coming into. Okay, that's not a bad idea. We have gotten away. COVID made everybody get away from physical interviews. We need to get back to physical interviews, because shaking a hand and looking in somebody's eye, you can't replace that. Not with a phone call, not with a text, not with an email. You can't replace that physical get together. It's just the way it is.
And to your point, Scott, is that, yes, I get there are companies that are skittish or have rules now since COVID about who they allow into their facility and when they do the touch stuff. Okay, Scott and I understand that part of it, work around it. Meaning like if your policy is that they have to mask up or they have to this before they do that, that's great, then do it. Because how are you going to get them in to even fill out paperwork? And you might say, well, everybody on board's virtually now. Okay. Are they virtually driving the truck? They're not virtually driving the truck, right? They've got to see the facility. So even though you might say, well, you guys are crazy, this doesn't apply in our industry, or that's dangerous, or we wouldn't do that. Okay, so if you're of that mindset, and maybe that is how it is, it could be you distribute medical supplies that have to be gone through a certain process. Okay, we understand. Doesn't mean that what we're saying you can't take and apply it in your own way. These are tools to try and say, okay, how does this work for my business? Come up with something that works for your business, that has that kind of a principle to it, that at least gives some more human interaction, or at least the touches we're talking about, where you're constantly letting them know that you're really happy that they took the time to do that. And so the last thing we're talking about is being irresistible and memorable, right? And I love this meme about this, because our competitors do this all the time. Already uploaded your resume, better make you retype your entire work history experience. That kind of goes along with how everybody says, well, we can virtually onboard you, and you upload your resume and you still have to put everything out there, right? So it's just kind of a fun thing to say, what if I put this meme up on my social media, right? What does it say about our company? So this kind of goes into the be irresistible and memorable. So what does this say? So basically this is saying I have a little bit of a sense of humor, right? That I do understand that the process is tedious when you go out and you apply for jobs. And it says in one little thing that's kind of fun, a lot about us as a company. So the best part about your company is the people who make it happen. Right. So that's that we can't exist without that. Because even if I was a whole robotic company, someone programmed them, somebody made a choice to buy them, somebody's keeping up with them. Right. So the best part of our company is that people make it happen. So show them why you are better. And it's going to be unique to each and every one of you. And that's where you have to bring your team in to be a part of that process. So employers have to consider quality of life, right? So sharing how you respect, that you're respectful, and that you're better than any other employee when it comes to that. So for me, if I were to put this meme up about already uploaded your resume, better make you retype it, it says quite a few things. Like I was mentioning, it's going to say that we're fun, but we also appreciate the quality of life that you have, because we know that your time is valuable. And then sharing experiences when things have been good and bad, and how you fix them or keep going. I've seen some companies do a really good job of this. Actually, they get into their social media platforms, post a video up on their website or whatnot, and say, hey, we had an issue yesterday loading trucks. Somebody forgot to turn the temperature down on the bulkhead, and we lost, 2 pallets of ice cream. But you know what we did? We did this to fix it. People need to see that. So Scott, I'd love for you to expand too on this particular part of the subject, because you see this so much in your searches and your communication.
Jen, one of my favorite things when you're bringing on, especially when I was being hired at a new place, that first interview, or maybe the day of orientation, where you come in and they let you meet everybody. They let you meet a couple of these people on the ground floor, and they let you go up in the office and meet a couple of people, and then you get to step in the president of the company's office for a second and chat with them. That makes you feel, as a new employee, so good. I mean, it just makes you feel, man, they really care, and it's a good family environment. That's one big way that you can be irresistible and memorable to a driver coming in, because I'm sure these drivers coming in, they probably go to some companies where they're like, does this guy even want to hire me? They probably walk in, and it's a stone cold environment. The contractor's probably busy, late to the meeting, and the driver's like, I don't want to work here. Why am I even here? You have to be different. You have to be different, differentiate yourself from the rest. And what that means is just being open, being honest, being yourself, but also doing some things differently, like take them on a tour, let them see a truck, maybe let them see one of your pieces of equipment, before they're hired. Some of that little, you're right, Jennifer, you can incorporate this advice any way you want to your company.
Right.
Just be different and be memorable, be something where they go home and the candidate is just like, that interview was so different than anyone I've ever been at before in my life. I love this company already. I'm ready to go. And at that point in time, you can pretty much tell them what you want to pay them and what you want to do with that, because you did such a great job showing yourself in the beginning that you can kind of dictate whatever you want to pay them and what you want to do at that time. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. You just got to be different.
It speaks the truth when you say that. And when you're talking about how, you and I are saying how we can apply this to whatever the business is. If I'm a company that just doesn't let people come through and I want to interview 10 people and I don't have the time, let's say, to walk 10 people through, my suggestion would be take your camera, whether you like it or not, and put someone on Zoom with you and walk them through. And like it's an individualized process and let them see and answer questions, because this is what we're saying about taking the principles of what we're saying and applying them to your industry. And instead of coming up, well, that just won't work, that just won't work, that just won't work. And that's why what they say, the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. This is why we're saying you have to embrace these things a little bit and try to make some changes. And being at the point of being irresistible and memorable is the fun stuff. We talk about the social media, sharing content, events. Hey, it was, weird hat day today. I know that's really mundane, but I'm just saying. And then you have some funny pictures and things you put up or whatnot. And this is my one big takeaway I want to say about this is that one of the hugest disconnects with hiring drivers is the fact that drivers are not in a position right now where they're coming out of high school and that's what is the glamorous job, right? So you have to remember that a lot of the people in the trucking industry, the age group of which they're in, some of them are very old school, is about how they want things done. And if you get a newer generation of hiring managers, they're trying to catapult them into the new way of doing things. You have to be respectful and mindful of that. And then you also need to be irresistible and memorable and fun for the new way that people are doing things so that you can attract these people that are coming into the industry when they're younger and want to keep them in it. So, I am excited about where we're going with everything. And I know this is a subject we could probably do a part 2 on, actually, Scott. Maybe that's what we need to do just on this. But we have just thoroughly enjoyed working on this particular series, just focused on FedEx contractors and other logistics companies and drivers. And we have one more that we're going to do in this particular series, one more episode. So I can't thank you all enough for your time. As always, you can always contact us via any of this information here, get more information, reach out to us if you'd like us to work on a strategy plan that's individualized or customized to your company and help you walk through some of these things. And Scott, I leave them with a happy Thanksgiving. How about you?
That's right. That's right. We're right up on it here. Happy holidays, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the time with your family. Some of you drivers will be hitting the road again tomorrow. Thank God for you guys. That's why Jennifer and I do what we do, is to connect you drivers with the best contractors and the best jobs we can get for you, and vice versa. Contractors, we're here to help you get the best people that you can possibly get in your facility. We're all about retention. The things that we try to impart to you is just about getting the best employees and keeping the best employees. So please take to heart today some of the things that we talked about, because as you can see, I'm very passionate about it. It's what drives me, Jennifer, as well. It's what's driven her over the years. So pay attention, put some of these things into action, and I promise you'll look up and your system will be so much more productive than it's been in the past. But Jennifer, had fun again. I love these. These are so much fun.
They're great.
Happy holidays again, everybody.
Happy holidays. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, your family. And Scott, you do the same. And